Man, oh man, we got a battle of the ages in Madison Square Garden. Jayson Tatum makes his emotional return to the place where he tore his Achilles. We'll talk about his performance. We'll talk about Payton Pritchard stepping up in the absence of Jaylen Brown. We'll talk about Baylor Scheierman, who was just electric down the stretch of this game. But I think we have to start by just acknowledging that this New York Knicks team, they've had their ups and downs this season. The Celtics only need one win to clinch the second seed. They're probably going to get it and have home court advantage. But you can look at this game and say, there's no Jaylen Brown, right? But on the other hand, the Knicks are a much better team than you in crunch time. Now, that might change with Jaylen Brown on the court, but those clutch threes that Josh Hart was able to hit. Josh Hart, the Celtics over the last many seasons love to just leave him open. That's the guy that they leave open, let him shoot threes, and if he makes them, you might lose a game or two, but for the most part, they're able to live with that. You can't do that this season. Josh Hart is shooting 41% from three. You can't leave him open. That makes this New York Knicks team a totally different animal because you can only leave open, perhaps a Mitchell Robinson when he's, out there on the perimeter when he's on the court, but he's never going to be spending any time on the perimeter unless he's, doing a dribble handoff or diving to the rim. You can't leave a Karl Anthony Towns open. You can't leave some of their, bench players in Clarkson. You can't leave a Shaman open. You can't leave Brunson, Bridges, Hart, Towns, Anunoby, any of those guys open, those starters, right? So this New York Knicks team, I think the Celtics are going to have trouble with them if they match up in the playoffs. Now, they haven't played this team healthy yet, right? Because Jayson Tatum missed the first couple of games, and now Jaylen Brown sits this one. I don't know if that was, strategic from Joe Mazzulla and the coaching staff, right? Don't show the Knicks your entire hand, right? Because they do have a back-to-back tomorrow, the Celtics do, against, I do believe, the Pelicans, right? So Jayson Tatum will sit that one. He's not ready to go in back-to-backs yet, right? There won't be any of those in the playoffs and whatever, so you should be fine. But I'm not sure whether this was, a legitimate management of Jaylen Brown in that, Achilles tendonitis that he's been working through. It hasn't been a big problem besides that Hawks game in his first game back from that, couple of games that he missed, right? So I don't know if that was Joe Mazzulla and the Celtics trying to, just outsmart the Knicks almost, not show any hands in case there's a potential, second round matchup here. But then that's also upsetting for the fans because we don't know how this team is going to match up fully when they do meet up, right? It was great for Jayson Tatum to get that game under his belt before, he potentially goes back there, right? You don't want his first game back in Madison Square Garden to be in the playoffs, right? Especially because that could be an emotional night. And, he said he was worried, not really worried about it, but, he was, a little uncomfortable and maybe, not quite ready to go back to that place in some of his interviews that he's been doing over the last couple of days. But, there wasn't much of that, at least as far as you could tell, in this game. Jayson Tatum looked great. Now, he didn't shoot the ball well, but he was racking up triple-double. I think he finished, if I'm not mistaken, just shy of that a 10 assist mark. He had 8 assists, but that is still 24 points, 13 rebounds, 8 assists for him. He was fantastic in this game. We'll talk more about him later, but I will just finish up by saying, right, this Knicks team, we don't have a real answer on whether the Celtics can handle them in the playoffs, right? They've beaten you now in the season series. I think they've won 3-1 now. Jayson Tatum didn't play in the first 3 games, and now Jaylen Brown doesn't play in this game. And you're able to keep it close on some electrifying, as I said, shooting from Payton Pritchard, from Baylor Scheierman. But, quite frankly, the Knicks just made a couple more shots in crunch time with Josh Hart, which we talked about, right? How you cannot leave Josh Hart open anymore, and that's going to completely shatter the Celtics, ways that they can guard him, their plans, their schemes in the playoffs. It's going to be a totally new series, and totally different series than the one we got last year. And we'll preview that if it comes to that, right? We don't even know that we're going to play the Knicks. The Knicks are going to have a tough battle with the Cavs, as it looks right now, either way. And quite frankly, I think the Knicks should try and lose. I don't know if they can now, but if I was the Knicks, right, I know you just beat them in the Celtics, but do you still want to play the Celtics second round, or would you rather play the Pistons? Would you rather fall to that 4th seed, but then you don't get home court advantage? So, I don't think they're going to play those types of games. It tends to be that, teams just try and win when they can, and you deal with whoever you get. But as for this game, right, a game that the Celtics didn't need. The Knicks definitely needed it more than the Celtics. It would have been a colossal loss for the Knicks if they had lost this game without Jaylen Brown. That being said, the Knicks did a lot of good things. We talked about that. Mitchell Robinson continued to be dominant on the offensive glass. If I'm not mistaken, I do believe he racked up, 7 rebounds. How many offensive rebounds was that? Just 2 offensive rebounds, but he was great defensively cleaning them up. He got fouled on a couple attempts and wasn't able to get the rebound, but was fouled anyway. So he was definitely a menace, as he always is, right? The Celtics did all that Hacker Robinson last year. There's less of that now. I think the Celtics, are more equipped with a guy like Keita who can sort of battle underneath with him. Vučević definitely cannot. We'll get to Vuč in a second because he had another horrific game on all aspects, really. I'm actually starting to get frustrated at Joe Mazzulla for not playing Luka Garza a single minute. And I don't know, if you're going to, if the claim is that you're just trying to work Vuč back in, it doesn't really matter right now, the games, and you're just trying to see if you can get anything out of Vučević, then why are you playing Keita that much, right? Lower Keita's minutes and play Garza, because right now it looks like the Celtics have just forgotten about Luka Garza, and as far as we know, he's been more impactful and does the same things that Vuč does, and quite frankly, at a better level right now. We can talk about Vuč more later on, but I'll just read his numbers on the night. He was, right, okay, in 24 minutes, 4 of 7, 2 of 4 from 3, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Now that's not terrible. He is a plus on the night, much better than his game against the Raptors, where the Celtics, or the Hornets rather, both of them, where he was like minus 15s in games that the Celtics won by 15. But still, he's out there 24 minutes, and he's getting blown by on every single possession. Jalen Brunson able to pull him out on the perimeter and then drive by him every single time. Keita, wasn't much better, but at least you're getting that physical presence underneath, that rim protection from Keita. You're not getting any of that from Vučević. He's really just standing out there, and if he makes a couple threes like he did late in this game, and we're able to keep the Celtics in the game when it felt like the Knicks were pulling away, that's great. But on a night where that doesn't happen, you're really just playing Keita. So you're going to have to get, a Garza or even a Hugo Gonzalez involved. Jordan Walsh played a couple minutes in this game. I don't know why we haven't seen Hugo Gonzalez in a while. I feel like Hugo Gonzalez, they're very similar players. I think Jordan Walsh just feels a little bit more confident in his three-point shooting. That might be the sole reason why Gonzalez isn't playing right now. Because other than that, I feel like they are similar players. Gonzalez can guard. Jordan Walsh was out here trying to guard Jalen Brunson. But it doesn't really matter at this point. It's nice to have a guy like Gonzalez, a guy like Walsh on the court. But Jalen Brunson's just going to pull the center into every possession anyway. So it doesn't really matter who you have out there. He's just going to pull the switch. And the Celtics aren't switching as much this year. Last couple of years, they've really, heavied in on switching being able to guard 1 through 5. Every player on the court can guard every position. This year, they're doing a lot of trying to fight over the top of screens, drop coverage, and Jalen Brunson, among every other talented guard in this league, has just picked the Celtics apart defensively in that, in those scenarios where there's that drop coverage situation. Celtics have also given up a lot of threes this year. They've given up the most threes out of any other team in the NBA. That's very unlike Joe Mazzulla, a guy who, is trying to win the margins. Like, they take a lot of threes, but then they're also giving up threes. That seems really counterintuitive of what Joe Mazzulla is trying to do. That being said, I think that's just how it has to be this year with the drop coverage that they are playing, right? Guys just shooting threes around screens, and you have to live with some of those. That being said, you can't let a guy who the Celtics continually do this. A guy that, okay, maybe you want to leave Josh Hart open at the beginning of the game, but he makes 2 or 3, and then you just keep leaving him open. Like, they don't even try and adjust. It's just really upsetting sometimes where they just keep thinking that the next one will be a miss, that the next one will be a miss. And that last 3 he hit was a extremely contested 3, for sure. That was I'm not going to say a lucky shot, but a difficult shot that he made to ice the game. But at that point in the game, he's already hot because he's already made 4 or 5 threes. He's already in that rhythm. You just can't let a guy do that. That being said, there are definitely positives to take away from this game. A night where Jaylen Brown doesn't play, you need someone to step up offensively. Payton Pritchard has been up and down on those nights where Jaylen Brown or a star doesn't play. Sometimes he's been great, sometimes he's just been non-existent. But Payton Pritchard definitely stepped up tonight. And it was early in this game. Jayson Tatum needed someone to help him out. And Payton Pritchard was getting in the paint. He was shooting his threes like he always does, knocking those down. But more importantly, just being, relentless at the rim, driving in, shooting sort of mid-range pull-ups over the top of a Mitchell Robinson, over the top of a Karl Anthony Towns. He was just torching the Knicks offense in the second half. And the Celtics couldn't slow the Knicks down offensively, so they needed Payton Pritchard just to match them. And Payton Pritchard was able to do exactly that. Plays, off the bench 36 minutes, right? So we talked so much about, him starting versus him going to the bench, right? Once they traded Simons, Payton Pritchard went to the bench. And honestly, if he didn't start, almost 50 games, he'd be the runaway 6th man of the year because he's playing off the bench but still playing starter minutes. In this game, scores 23 points, 10 of 20 shooting, 3 of 8 from 3, 6 assists as well. The turnovers weren't great from the Celtics. They had 10, which is actually below their season average. They averaged like 12, which is still best in the league. But that being said, the Knicks only had 7, right? So on a night where the Knicks are uncharacteristically good with the ball, the Celtics were just their same old average, and it wasn't quite enough. There were a couple live ball turnovers early in this game where the Knicks were able to get out in transition, right? But the Celtics kept it close because of their offense, because of Jayson Tatum and his production, right? We talked about him before, but just the fact that he's doing this not even a year from his Achilles, it's just incredible. I mean, Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown, right? I think when both of them play, I'm trying to think of the only game that they lost where both of them played. I don't even know. Is there a loss where both of them played? There might not be. I guess the Spurs game, right? That's a game where both of them lose, but Jaylen Brown gets ejected, so who knows what really would have happened in that game. Right? But other than that, Jayson Tatum has been just fantastic, and he's just only ramping it up game after game, right? The shooting is going to go up and down. I don't think the shooting will ever not go up and down. I think some games in the playoffs he will have a great shooting game. Some games he won't, but he's doing all the other things, right? Averaging, almost triple doubles. I mean, career high in rebounds, career high in assists. Limited games still, but it's been over a month now since he's returned, and he only looks better by the day. You can live with the shooting when he's doing all this other things. He's jumping up to contest, a Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson, getting knocked to the ground in a place that might be hard for him to do that. You would think he'd be a little protective of it. given that it is Madison Square Garden where he injured, or where he tore his Achilles in the first place. But nope, he goes right in aggressively. He puts that behind him, and he put on a show today. And then the guy that truly kept him in the game, and it was late when the Knicks were starting to pull away, third quarter, early fourth quarter, and Baylor Scheierman was electrifying. I mean, three-pointer after three-pointer, the mohawk and everything running wild, the thumb-up celebration. He was just silencing the Knicks crowd. After every bucket that a Jaylen Brunson, a Knicks player, made, Baylor Scheierman would answer right back with a three. And off the bench, 20 points, 6 of 7 from three. Sidestep threes with a dribble, getting Karl-Anthony Towns to jump, just knocking down every shot he got. Jayson Tatum with the assist. Baylor Scheierman knocking it down. Payton Pritchard collapses the defense. Kick out. Baylor Scheierman knocking it down. Baylor Scheierman did everything he could to keep them in this game. And quite honestly, I think this performance secured him at least a rotation spot in the playoffs. Because if he's going to be doing stuff like this on a night where you just need the offense, if he's going to knock down threes at this consistent rate, how can you not play him? He's a good defender as well. He's a point guard type player. I know he plays that forward position, but he can dribble the ball. He can make plays for others. He's a great facilitator. You just need a guy out there. Take the pressure off of Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, Payton Pritchard. Derek White hasn't been able to shoot the ball well. Quite frankly, if Derek White is struggling in the playoffs, there might be games where Baylor Scheierman closes over Derek White. Now, Derek White does all the other stuff. We've talked about this time and time again, how you can't get caught up in the shooting. But this wasn't a great game from Derek White shooting-wise. 2 of 10 overall, 0 of 6 from 3. Actually, it was a abysmal shooting night. A -3 on the night. Plays still 38 minutes. To be honest, I know Derek White does all this great things, but on a night where he just doesn't have it going, I wonder if, Joe Mazzulla mixes it up, puts in a guy like a Gonzalez, puts in a guy like a Baylor Scheierman for heavier minutes to see if they can get something going. You can always close with White if you need. In fact, you don't even need to close with White if you don't, need to. But Scheierman obviously closed this game just because of how hot he was. But maybe in the first round, if Derek White doesn't have it going, put in a Baylor Scheierman, just see how it goes, because Baylor Scheierman has definitely earned that spot. But we'll wrap it up here. Other than that, there wasn't much else from this game. Neemias Queta had a nice little push shot from about 10-15 feet that was sort of cool to see in the third quarter. We talked about Scheierman, we talked about Pritchard. Vučević, Pritchard, Scheierman, the only 3 guys off the bench. Nobody else played. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I don't know if it's a rest or Joe Mazzulla just is not comfortable playing a guy like a Gonzalez or, a Ron Harper Jr. are the 2 guys that come to mind. Maybe less so on a Harper Jr. because of how good Scheierman was. But it would be nice to see if, you could get an extended run here, at least in the last 2 games, with a Ron Harper Jr. or a Gonzalez, especially since you might need them, right? You just want them to be ready for their first ever playoff games if it comes to that. But we'll wrap it up here. A not a frustrating loss, but a loss that would have been nice to have. You don't need it. The Celtics have the chance to wrap it up and clinch the 2nd seed tomorrow. They play the Pelicans 7:30. We're actually going to try and go live for this game. Just for a live stream. We haven't done this in a while. I really don't have time to be doing lots of these, but we're going to do a live stream for the entire game, at least try to. So stay tuned for that. We'll have the link on YouTube as well. We'll have a podcast episode coming on Saturday evening. It's going to be our official season recap where we were wrong about the Celtics this season, and boy, were we all wrong. I mean, everybody in the entire world was wrong about this Celtics team. So we're going to react to that. And then Monday, they play the Magic Sunday. That's their last game of the season. So probably Monday evening we will have our sort of all NBA award show and all that will probably be live for that as well. So you can check out those on YouTube. You can catch them later on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. And then next or a week from Sunday is game 1 of the playoffs. Celtics trying to make a deep run in a year that was a gap year, a year that nobody thought that they could be a playoff team, a championship team, let alone a team that was above 500. And with all that, Jaylen Brown, top 5 MVP case, maybe even top 3 at this point with all the guys that are injured and 65 game rule. That's another thing that we might have to talk about. But other than that, follow on social media. And until next time, go C's.